And the main reason why we're here is because of our Book Buddies program. Okay? Did you know that today's actually our last day of Book Buddies program? It's kind of sad, but that's okay. Because it's something that we will continue on for a long time. And we actually, so the volunteers, all of the volunteers that come in and read to you, they're part of a place that helps us find volunteers to come read. And they were awarded a $5,000 check. $5,000. Do you guys know how much money that is? That's a lot of money. I know some of you have counted that high. So I know you're counting a lot of money, but it's a lot of money. So because the Timberwolves gave us this money is why we get to have this fun day today. And I think there might even be something special for you at the end of today, okay? You haven't kind of told me that.
I told my kids, they're very excited.
So some of the kids might know what the special surprise is at the end. So with that, I'm going to introduce an author, someone who writes books. Has anybody ever written a book, boys and girls?
Short books, mini books.
Love them. I'd love to read some of those books sometime, boys and girls. But with that, I'm going to introduce Mr. Gordon Fredrickson. Okay? He's got lots of books. He's going to talk about the books. He's going to talk about a lot of different things with books. And then at the end, we'll maybe have some time for some questions. Okay? With that, Gordon Fredrickson.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Gordon Fredrickson, and I'm here to tell you real-life adventures of boys and girls and grown-ups just like us on a family farm on a summer day way back in the year 1950, about the time I was your age or maybe a little younger, growing up on the farm. The name of my story today is If I Were a Farmer, Nancy's Adventure. And it's about a little girl named Nancy. Can you say Nancy?
Nancy!
And her kitty named Dusty.
Dusty!
That's right, Nancy and Dusty. Now, I have to tell you this first, boys and girls, and that is what I tell you about farming today is not made up stuff. This is stuff that farmers really do. And much of it is based on things that happened to me on the farm I grew up on. And here's a picture of that farm, 120 acres of hilly, rocky land in eastern Scott County. Not a very good farm, but it was a pretty nice home. And what I remember most about this farm, there was always something to do. Yeah. And no matter how young or old or big or small you were, you pitched in to help. Let me explain what I mean. Imagine a time much different than now, when things were not better but pleasing somehow. Like the year 1950, when farming was done by mothers and fathers and daughters and sons. With tractors and horses we worked on the land. And lacking machinery, we managed by hand. We did tilling and planting and tending the crop. We'd harvest and store it. The work didn't stop. And family members each morning and eve had responsibilities that they couldn't leave. Here's a picture of me when I was 11 years old carrying milk in that pail. And here I am at just 4 years old, stacking up some hay with that fork that's much too tall for me, as you can see. With pails and pitchforks, we chored twice a day, milking cows, pumping water, feeding silage and hay. We fed mash to white chickens and corn to red hogs, and milk to the kitties, and scraps to the dogs, and to a team of grand horses with glistening roan coats. We fed mounds of grass hay and 2 cans just like this of clean oats. We used to use an old coffee can like this to measure out oats to feed those big horses. Now I've written some tales in narrative rhyme showing my family spending their time doing things together for work or for fun, but always aiming to make every day a big one. Now that's a picture of my father, who always liked to goof around and have fun. No matter how miserable the job was, he would always find something to make a joke out of. And there he is taking that cow's stinky tail and putting it right under his nose for a mustache. Now, each farm country tale is my humble attempt to characterize a specific event. And to satisfy readers' desires for pleasure, I've mixed fact and fancy, measure for measure. The fact here is this is a picture of my mother and my father milking cows on the farm I grew up on, and here's an illustration from one of my stories of the mother in that story milking cows in the year 1950. And in these stories, my family consists of my father and mother. I have a little sister and a little brother. Joey's 5, Maggie's 9, and I'm Jimmy in the story, a boy of 10. And with a farm country tale, I'd gladly begin. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, I write 2 series of books. The book I just read the beginning of you two, a prologue, is called a Farm Country Tale series. I have a Halloween story, a Thanksgiving story, a Christmas story, a picnic story, and a harvest story. All of them show that same farm family in 1950 with all these farm activities, and it shows it accurately. Now, my goal, boys and girls, is to write about 25 of these with the same family in that will show all these farm activities from January through December, so that 100 years from now, somebody can pick up one of my books and say, so this is what it was like to be a child on a farm in 1950. Then I write another series of books for younger children like yourselves. It's called the If I Were a Farmer series, and that's about a child and his or her pet imagining what they would do if they were farming, and they tell their pet all about it. Very cute, but also very accurate, because what they tell their pet about farming is what farmers really do. I have a poetry book as well, and a book called What I Saw on the Farm, which I'll talk to you a little bit about later. It's kind of a special book. Now, the thing I want you to remember again is all my stories are based on things farmers really do. And I like to put in books things that farmers really do, but you wouldn't find in the history books. Now watch the screen, because you're going to see something that farmers really do, but you will not find in the history book. Are you ready to watch that screen? Okay, now this is something that all dairy farmers have done, and here's how it happens. This is a real picture. You see that farmer, he's milking that cow, isn't he? And he sees a cat walk by. And you know how cats are, they're kind of smart and cocky, and he thinks he's going to squirt that cat in the ears just to irritate it, just to get it angry. But that cat is so fast, it turns around and starts catching it right in its mouth, doesn't it? Pretty clever, huh? And then you get another cat. Now there's a question coming here, so listen up. Then you get another cat that wants to do the same thing as that cat. Now what do you call a cat that wants to do the same thing as another cat?
Copycat.
That's right, you got a copycat invented right here on the farm. You probably didn't know that, but that's where that word comes from. Now, I knew I wanted to put a copycat in my book, and in my book called A Farm Country Christmas Eve, you see that very same thing, where the mother in the story is milking a cow, and there's a copycat catching some milk there. Now, also, in the story I'm about to read to you, called Nancy's Adventure, little Nancy does the same thing to Dusty. Only you notice Dusty isn't quite as good at catching it. Yeah, Dusty needs a little practice, doesn't she, to catch that milk. We'll see if she gets better by the end of the program. But you got that same thing here as in that other story. Now let me give you a little more preview of what Nancy does in the book I'm about to read to you, called If I Were a Farmer, Nancy's Adventure, remember, with Nancy and Dusty. Nancy wants to be a dairy farmer, and she knows the first thing she needs to do is go out and get the cows for milking. Now, I've seen children's books that will tell you to call cattle by saying, here cow, here cow. That's not right, boys and girls. The way you do it is the way Nancy does it. She calls, come boss, come boss. Can you say that good and loud for me?
Come boss, come boss.
Very good. Now, when we get to that part in the story, excuse me, where little Nancy is calling cattle, I want you to call along with me, okay? Now, the next thing she finds out is when she gets the cows, there's a newborn calf. And she has to bring that calf back to the barn and milk the cow. And then she teaches that newborn calf how to drink out of a pail. Now, boys and girls, this is another activity on the farm that you're not going to find in a history book. How to teach a newborn calf how to drink out of a pail. But it's in 2 of my books, and I'm going to demonstrate it for you right now, just for fun. Okay? Now, I'm going to need your help, though. We have to pretend this is half full of milk. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have to pretend there's a calf here. Can we do that too?
Yeah.
Good, because I didn't bring my calf today. So this is half full of milk, and here's what you do. You take these 2 fingers. Now hold them up. Hold up these 2 fingers. You take these 2 fingers, and you dunk them in the milk. Oh, and you swish them around. You get them all wet and sticky. Can you feel how wet and sticky those fingers are getting? Yeah. And then you put them right in the calf's mouth. Now the calf, oh yeah, the calf, he's going to like the taste of those fingers, isn't he? And he's going to suck on those fingers so hard you can actually pull his nose right into that pail. And when his mouth is right above the milk, you lift the pail till his mouth is in the milk. Well, he's still sucking on your fingers. He's actually drinking. All you have to do is slide your fingers out of his mouth, and if he keeps drinking, you have successfully taught a newborn calf how to drink out of a pail. Now that's something farmers have been doing for centuries, boys and girls, and some of them still do it that way. And now you know how to do it too. Now we're ready to begin the story, If I Were a Farmer, Nancy's Adventure. Now, the first thing I need to tell you, boys and girls, is that Nancy does not live on a farm. So where does she get her information about farming? Books, that's right. And you notice how clever that little girl is. What book did she read that made her particularly smart about farming? Yeah, she read one of my books, didn't she? Clever little girl, that Nancy. You're going to see how clever she is as this show goes on. She says to her kitty, Dusty, well, she's in her room, she says, would you like to live on a farm, Dusty? I think I would like to live on a farm. I like books about farming, and I like pictures of cows and chickens and hogs. If I were a farmer, I know exactly what I would do. If I were a farmer, I would keep hogs in a large pen with a comfortable hog barn. If I were a farmer, I would keep chickens in a pen with green grass on the ground and a chicken coop where they could lay their eggs. If I were a farmer, I would have a herd of Holstein cows. I would raise the newborn calves and put them in a pen with room for them to play. Dusty, you could play with all the kitties in the cow barn. If I were a farmer, I would keep the cows in a pasture with long sloping hillsides, apple trees and oak trees. There would be a pond and a small creek. And when the sun peeks over the eastern hills on summer mornings, we will run to the far end of the pasture to get the cows for morning milking. Are you ready to call with me, boys and girls? When I see them, I will call, come boss, come boss, come boss, come boss, come boss, come boss. And they will come to me. The milk cows will go to the barn, Dusty, but we must count the 5 young heifers. Count with me now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's right. There should be 4 dry cows. Jane, Sarah, Josie, and Susie. Uh-oh, where's Susie? We will look for Susie at the poplar grove where she likes to give birth to her calves. But first we have to cross the creek. It's tricky, but I know where to step. Doesn't look like Dusty knows where to step though, does she? Look, there is Susie feeding her newborn calf. I'll run home to get the tractor and the old spreader so we can bring the calf home. This old spreader sure comes in handy to haul calves. It will not take long to drive to the pasture to get Susie and her calf. But wait, the neighbor's bull seems angry at that tree. Look, Maggie and her big brother Jimmy are sitting on a branch. Oh, I have to explain this a little bit to you, boys and girls. But a bull is a male and a cow is a female. And a bull can be very mean. When I was a child on the farm, about 9 years old, we had a bull in our pasture, and my dad would say to me, after supper, he'd say, "Son, go get the cows, but watch out for the bull." How do you watch out for something that weighs over 1,000 pounds? I'll tell you what you do. You make sure there's a tree nearby that you can crawl up in a hurry. And in the back of our pasture, still standing today, is a tree that I crawled up when I was about 9 or 10. Back then, when the old bull tried to chase me a little, I crawled up in that tree, and it's still standing. So Nancy sees that her neighbors are in trouble here. What do you suppose she's going to do?
Help them.
Help them? That's right, she says. She says, if I were a farmer, I would always help my neighbors. I'll just open the gate and drive the tractor close to the tree so Jimmy and Maggie can jump into the spreader. She has a plan, doesn't she? Smart little girl, that Nancy. She knows exactly what she's going to do here. I'll close the gate quietly, Dusty. I don't want to attract too much attention. That bull is dangerous. If he sees us, he might charge at us. He might attack us. He could hurt us. Now, boys and girls, I have to remind you that one of the reasons I put this piece in here about the bull is because we have to remember that farming is not a petting zoo. So many places like to show that farming is just, oh, you come and pet the animals and everybody's so nice. But we have to remember that farming is not a petting zoo. It's a very dangerous place with a lot of hard work. Yes, the animals can be nice, but you have to be careful. So she's being very careful here. She says, we need to take it slowly, Dusty. This bull is angry. And if he broke something on the tractor and the tractor stopped, we would be stranded here. She backs the spreader up and says, that should be close enough. Hey, Jimmy and Maggie, climb down and jump into the spreader. Both of you must duck down low so he can't see you. Bulls do not give up easily. Jimmy, I think it is safe for you to open the gate, close it right after I drive through. Now, Jimmy and Maggie are very grateful, but Nancy says, oh, you are welcome, Jimmy and Maggie, but you don't have to thank me. You'd have done the same thing for me. Now I must go to the poplar grove to get Susie and her newborn calf. We must be careful, Dusty. Susie is ready to protect her baby. But if we move slowly, we will calm down. She will calm down. Easy, Susie. We need to get your calf back to the barn. Follow us to the barn, Susie, and we will put your calf in a pen with fresh straw. After I take a little of your milk for your baby, you will feel better, old girl. Here, Dusty, catch this. And Dusty still needs more work, doesn't she? Dusty, I will teach Susie's baby how to drink out of a pail. First, I have to dip my fingers into the milk and then try to get the baby to suck on my fingers. As she sucks on my fingers, Dusty, I lift the pail until her mouth is in the milk. I hold the pail there until she starts to drink. Wow, she's drinking already. Now, what often happens when you teach a newborn calf how to drink out of a pail, they will hit the pail with their head and spill a bunch of milk, and that has happened here, you see. Don't worry, Dusty. I saved some milk for the kitties. Now I will milk the rest of the cows and feed the other calves. Then we will go to the house to have a big breakfast. We have a lot of work to do during the rest of the day. And that's what I would do if I were a farmer. And that's the end of the story, boys and girls. Did you like it? I'm so glad you did, because I sure had fun telling it to you. Now, let me show you some things that are important to Nancy, and I hope they're important to you. We have quite a few things yet to do in the program. Remember when Nancy's neighbors are in trouble? She helps them, doesn't she? So you always want to help your neighbors, boys and girls. That's important to Nancy. I hope it's important to you too. Notice how Nancy takes good care of her animals. She takes care of her hogs, her cows, her kitties, and her calves. If you have animals at home, boys and girls, be sure and take good care of them. Feed them, clean up after them, water them. Never, ever be mean to animals because they depend on us. You always want to be good to them just like Nancy is here. I dedicate this show to my wife, Nancy. And here's a picture of my wife, Nancy, when she was 8 years old. What do you think she's holding on her lap there? A cat. What do you think the cat's name is? Dusty. That's right. That's a picture, or that's my wife over. That's not a picture of my wife. That's my wife over there. If you would wave to her and say hi, Nancy, and keep waving, she'll take your picture. Say hi, Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Nancy.
Thank you.
See, this makes her feel popular too, and she likes that. Now, I have a little story to tell you. This was taken in 1956 when Nancy was 8 years old. 13 years later, when I went to pick Nancy up on our first date, I was a little nervous, you might imagine. I drove my car into the yard. It was a Mustang. I got out, I slammed the door. The garage door was open, and who do you suppose come rushing out of the garage to greet me but that kitty, Dusty. That's right, Dusty came running out of the garage to greet me, and you know that cat was so smart, it liked me right away. That's right, it knew what a nice guy I was right away, and Dusty and I became good friends. I have to tell you about Dusty. She was not a house cat. She was an outdoor cat. She slept outside every night. Very tough kitty, but she lived to be over 20 years old. That's like 140 in people years, I think. And she had her last litter of 2 kitties when she was 18 years old. What a marvelous cat that Dusty was. And I dedicate all my stories to my mother and father and my 2 older sisters, who made my life growing up on the farm a wonderful adventure. Boys and girls, I have to tell you about my sisters. They were 5 and 6 years older than me, and they would read to me regularly. And that is the nicest thing you can do for anybody. So if you have people that read to you, be sure and thank them for it, because it's just the nicest thing anybody can do. And when you can read to somebody else, be sure and do it, because they will always, always love you for it. I know they will. Thank you. This is an illustration of the farm I grew up on. Here's a farm. This illustration is in the Thanksgiving and the Christmas book. And before we go on to the next part, I just want to say thanks for this so far. I've enjoyed it very much. And also, before we go into the next part, where I'm going to tell you a little bit about another book that you're going to enjoy later, I want to take this opportunity to thank some people. And because there are so many, I don't have the names memorized, but I want you to help me thank these people. First of all, there's Mrs. Geese, your superintendent. You know your superintendent? If you see her, be sure and tell her, thanks for bringing Farmer Gordon here, okay? And Mr. Bell, thanks to him, I wouldn't be here today if he didn't let me in the building. Mrs. Gelming, who helped organize the whole event. To all teachers who allow me to use their valuable class time to entertain and teach you as well. Would you give those people a nice big hand? Thank you, everyone. Now, there's some other special people here today too that I'll be introducing a little later, and I want you to thank them as well. But right now, I'm going to go into this book. It's called What I Saw on the Farm. Now, this is a fun little book I wrote, and here's what it's about. It's about kids who came back from a field trip to the farm, And the principal asked him, what did you see in the farm kids? And you know they don't tell the principal the whole truth. No, they kind of exaggerate and tell him a tall story. And I had this idea for this book 10 years ago. Now, some of you might be interested. I saw a bunch of hands go up when a number of you said you told Mr. Bell that you'd written a book. Well, here's how I write books. I want to go through a little bit of how I write the book and how I come to end up with all these books. Here's how I wrote this one. The first thing, I had the idea. I thought to myself, what if kids came home from a field trip and the principal asked them what they saw and they kind of told them a tall story. Now the principal knows better, but you know, they're having a little fun with them on this and the principal enjoys it. So I had the idea, I did a bunch of planning, I did a bunch of writing, I did a bunch of rewriting, I hired an illustrator, I hired somebody to lay it out and design it, and then I paid big money to have it printed. These are all things I went through to write my book. Let me give you a little detail about it. Here was my idea. I told you that already, and I thought I had the first line. I thought, what I saw on the farm caused me great alarm. That was going to be my first line in my book. And then I wrote the first stanza. Instead of the hogs eating corn in the pens, by a table they sat, tucking white napkins under the folds of their big shiny chins. After eating the corn being passed all about, each piggy wiped his snouty snout. That was going to be my first page. And I kind of liked it, but I thought, well, we need more animals, don't we? So I introduced a hog, a horse, a cow, a duck, a goose, a hen, a rooster, a sheep, a dog, and a cat. Those are all the animals these kids are going to see on the farm, and then they're going to tell their principal a tall story about them. Here was my stanza about the horse. What I saw on the farm caused me great alarm. Since farming with horses is now obsolete, each horse drives a tractor from high in the seat, steering the wheel with the hooves on her feet. Her legs were so long that it was a tight squeeze for her to bend her knees. So that was another idea I had. Too close? So I went ahead and I rewrote them again and again. And just to show you this picture, the changing and the rewriting, I had stacks of paper, boys and girls, that was this high. I had stacks of paper where I had rewritten things. Look at them all laid out there. Now, then I'm thinking of this. Now remember, I wrote this 10 years ago. Then I need somebody to illustrate it, don't I? Because I'm no good at that. I went through 2 adults. I hired an adult, didn't like what he did, so we got out of that contract. I interviewed another adult to do it, didn't like what he did either. They kept asking me, well, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? I said, read the script and use your imagination. And then, you're going to like this story. I ran into this lady who was bragging about her grandson being such a great artist. And I said, well, you know, grandmothers get bragging rights, right? But she kept saying, this boy draws every night. He comes home from school, does his schoolwork, and then he draws. And I thought, you know, I want to see this guy's drawings. He was 12 years old at the time. That's his name, and that's his picture when he was 12. His name is Brad Simon. And I looked at what he did, and I hired him. I paid him big money to draw, and this was his first picture he drew. This is the hogs eating corn. That's the tall tale. And he did this all on his own, just from looking at my words. Pretty good, huh? Yeah. So those of you who like to draw, keep at it. Keep at it. He already has money in his college fund. And I told him I wanted him to draw the child who saw something on the farm. Then we have a picture of what they actually saw. So you see, we do have a picture of what they actually saw. And then this is what she tells the principal. And here's what the artist drew. And here's what the layout artist did. He took this and he made it look like this. And here is one of my favorite stanzas. Here the boy sees the horses. What I saw on the farm caused me great alarm. Instead of the horse pulling hard in the heat, she sat on a tractor up high in the seat, and she steered the front wheels with the hooves on her feet. Her legs were so long that it was a tight squeeze as she struggled to fit in her kneesy knees. And here's another one of my favorites. I especially like this one. It's about kitties. Here you see kitties. What I saw on the farm caused me great alarm. Instead of the cat being cuddly and tame, she practiced her batting to play a ball game. She never struck out. She gained national fame. She doubled her chances to hit without fail, holding bats in her paws and her tail, so she could take 2 swings at it. So that's example of pages. And then before it went to the printer, we double-checked it all, sent it to the printer in Mankato, Minnesota. All my books are made in the USA. Most all of them are printed right here in Minnesota. And that's the book, What I Saw on the Farm. I hope you like that book, because the next speaker here today is going to tell you a little bit about that as well. You will be getting a free copy of this book, and I want to introduce the people who are responsible for doing that. First of all, there's an organization called the Shepherd Center at the Cannon Valley. These are people who like to do a lot of good things for the community. Shepherd Center of the Cannon Valley. I did a program for them about 1.5 years ago, and then they came up with this idea for me to come here. Let me tell you a little bit about them. Shepherd Center of the Cannon Valley is an organization working to provide programs and services to this area, featuring senior adults who volunteer their life skills to benefit the community. These include health and fitness programs, adventures in learning, educational and fun trips, meal deliveries, book buddies, and that's the people who read to you, along with many other services. The seniors involved are engaged and active in contributing to the quality of life in the Cannon Falls area. A wonderful organization. I've met many of them, and they're a fine group. The good people of the Shepherd Center of the Cannon Valley, under the leadership of their executive director, Rod Johnson, applied for and received an educational grant from the Minnesota Timberwolves. They used the money to purchase enough of my books so that each and every one of the first graders will be taking a free autographed copy home of this book, thanks to Mr. Johnson, Shepherd Center, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. So I would like to introduce Rod Johnson at this time, and I would like you to give him a nice big hand, please. Thank you, Rod.
How did you like Farmer Gordon? Did he do a good job? And as he mentioned, we're with the Shepherd Center here in Cannon Falls, and you heard a little bit about it, but how this all happened was the Minnesota Timberwolves really believe in the importance of reading and how fun and important reading is, so they make funds available to organizations that find ways to help promote reading. And so we thought, you know, book buddies, that promotes reading. Wouldn't it be fun to get a book to give all of you at the end of book buddies? I want to thank the book buddy volunteers. How about if we clap for the book buddy volunteers? Did you enjoy having them read to you every morning? Yeah! It was fun. So thank you to the book buddy volunteers. Thank you to the Minnesota Timberwolves for giving us, we were up actually at a Timberwolves game and they gave us one of those great big checks. So that's how we received the funding that we could purchase a book for you. So we want to thank the book buddy volunteers. We want to thank the Minnesota Timberwolves. We have some people from the Shepherd Center Board of Directors. They're here today. Let's give them a hand. So it's a special day. We had Mr. Fredrickson here speak to you. We are in a moment going to give you your free books. They autograph the books, so that's going to be special. And it's such a special day that you might have noticed this gentleman that just walked in. After this, we're going to be live on the radio on KDHL. That's Mr. Gordy Kosfeld right there. We're going to be on the radio from like 9:30 to 10 today. We're going to talk about book buddies and about you and about getting books. And so again, we're glad we could be a part of this. We've had a lot of fun, and we want to keep doing this next year too, and the years after, and the years after. And we want to thank the teachers for allowing us to do this, and everybody involved. A lot of people came together to do this. And we have books. Is it time to pass them out, do you think? I think so. I think so. Who wants a book? Yeah. All right.
Mr. Cohen believed in reading. He believed in adults from grandparents. He believed that there were students in the building who maybe didn't have
Questions? Anybody have a question for me?
Over here.
Right here? We can come back if you forgot it. That happens to me all the time. Okay, any other questions? Way over there, yes. How about this one, man?
How old are you?
You know, I get
me that all the time.
I get asked this all the time, and it's hard to remember because it changes every year. I'm 68,
Whoa.
and my dear wife is 66.
That's almost as old as my grandpa, and he also grew up on a farm too.
You know what you need to do for me now is, you see your grandpa every once in a while? Be sure and ask him questions about what he did when he grew up on a farm, because I'll tell you something, a story not told is lost forever. So we want to ask questions of our parents, our grandparents, and we want to find out what it was like for them so they can tell their stories. Okay, you do that?
Okay.
Great. Yes?
My grandpa lives on a farm.
Same thing to you. Ask him some questions about what he did when he was a little boy. Ask him what chores he did.
How old are your sisters?
My sisters, that's a good question. One is 5 years older than me, so she's 72, and the other is 6 years older than me. So, no, I'm sorry, so she's 73, and the other is 6 years older than me, she's 74. So they're both doing well, though, and I visit them often. They don't read to me anymore, though. Not that I wouldn't like that. Any other questions? Yes, young man.
I'm really good at flying.
What?
What kind of dog is this?
What kind of dog is that? That is a dancing dog. And that's the thing. See, here's the kind of dog they actually saw. You see the one in the picture there? That's a white German Shepherd. We actually owned a white German Shepherd. He was very aggressively friendly. He used to wag his tail and knock over my nieces and nephews. Yeah. Yes.
My grandpa was raised on a farm,
Your grandpa was raised on a farm?
but he doesn't have that much animals. All he has is cows.
He had cows. Well, you be sure and ask him if he ever milked a cow and squirted a cat in the mouth, okay?
He has cats, but he wants to stop eating.
Okay, yes.
I live on a farm and I have donkeys and cats.
You have donkeys? Donkeys are very interesting. He says he lives on a farm and has donkeys on it. Interesting. How did I do what?
This idea.
Actually, that was the idea of the illustrator, the 12-year-old boy. Now, my idea, I wrote in the words there on the left about the rooster mowing the lawn. I thought, you know, instead of just crowing all the time, why not have him do something? And the boy, who was 12 years old, he came up with that drawing. Don't you love the colors he used on that? Yeah, that's one of my favorites that he did. Yes?
How many books did you write?
I've got 10 books so far that I've written that you see up there, and I've got about 20 more books planned. I've got chapter books planned too, so by the time you people get into reading chapter books, I hope to have some chapter books for you to read. The first one is going to be called Garden Ghost. Garden Ghost, yes. Based on an actual story when I was a child, and my sisters and I would see a ghost in the garden outside our bedroom window. Yes. Way back there, have a question for me.
Are you from a different
Am I from a different state? No, I'm from Minnesota. Okay? I live about an hour away from here, about an hour's drive from here, on the other side of Farmington, over to Lakeville. I live on a little 5-acre piece of the farm I grew up on yet.
Yay!